In a desolate landscape where the scorching heat consumed everything alive and the wind whipped up clouds of dust, a lion lay on the side of a barely visible path. His once mighty body was now a mere shadow of its former strength. His fur, once golden and gleaming, was matted with dirt and sweat. The lion's chest heaved heavily, each breath seeming like his last. His eyes, once burning with pride and power, were now clouded with pain, hunger, and hopelessness. It seemed as though tears had frozen in them, as if the beast himself mourned his fate. He was on the brink of death, abandoned and forgotten by the world. People passed by. Some cast a fleeting glance of pity at the lion but quickly looked away and hurried on. Others, accustomed to the harsh laws of nature, merely shrugged. That's life. He won't survive. No one believed that this emaciated, weakened beast could ever come back to life. No one wanted to take the risk of dealing with a predator, even a dying one. The lion was alone and his time seemed to be running out. But on one of those sweltering days, a man appeared on the path. His name was Artyom. He was a middle-aged man with a tired but kind face, marked by determination. He was neither a hunter nor a scientist nor a rescuer, just an ordinary person traveling through these lands to deliver humanitarian aid to remote villages. When he saw the lion, he froze. Something about this exhausted creature touched his heart. Artyom couldn't just walk by. He knew that leaving the lion to die alone would be a betrayal of something deeply human. Artyom understood that approaching a wild animal, even one so weak, was dangerous. The lion was still a lion, a creature whose claws and fangs could remind anyone of its power at any moment. But there was no threat in the animal's eyes, only pain and despair. Artyom took a step forward. The lion lifted his head, his ears twitched, but he didn't growl or try to stand. He just watched, as if assessing the man's intentions. Artyom slowly knelt down to avoid frightening the beast. In his backpack, he had a bottle of water and some food, dried meat he was carrying for the villagers. He pulled out a piece of meat and tossed it toward the lion, keeping his distance. The lion sniffed but didn't move. Then Artyom decided to take a risk. He poured water into a small bowl and carefully slid it toward the animal. The lion, as if summoning his last reserves of strength, reached for the bowl and began to lap at it eagerly. That moment marked the beginning. Artyom realized he couldn't abandon the lion. He decided to stay and fight for its life, despite the risks and uncertainty. In a nearby village, he found an old shed that became a temporary shelter for him and the lion. The locals, upon learning of his plan, shook their heads. "You're crazy," they said. "That lion won't survive, and you're risking your life." But Artyom was resolute. The first days were the hardest. The lion, whom Artyom named Scar, because of an old scar running across his muzzle, was too weak to stand. He barely ate, and water seemed to be the only thing keeping him alive. Artyom brought meat he managed to get from local hunters and sat patiently by the lion's side, waiting for him to try the food. Sometimes Scar looked at the man with distrust, but the emptiness in his eyes was no longer as profound. A faint, barely noticeable glimmer of hope had appeared. Artyom spent hours talking to the lion. He shared stories about his life, about how he himself had once felt lost and struggled through hardships. "We're alike, Scar," he said with a smile. "Both on the edge, but not giving up yet." The lion, of course, didn't understand the words, but something in the man's voice, its calmness and kindness, made the animal relax. A week later, Scar began to stand. His movements were clumsy, his legs trembled, but he could take a few steps. Artyom rejoiced at every small bit of progress like a child. He brought more food, found clean water, and even tried to build a makeshift shelter to protect the lion from the scorching sun. The locals, watching this, began to change their minds. Some brought food, others offered help. The story of a man saving a lion started spreading through the village. A month passed. Scar was no longer the dying creature Artyom had found by the roadside. His fur began to shine, His muscles grew stronger and his gaze became clear and attentive. But the most astonishing thing wasn't this. Scar began to trust Artyom. When the man approached, the lion no longer tensed or looked away. He allowed Artyom to stroke his head, and once he even licked the man's hand, as if in gratitude. That moment stunned everyone who witnessed it. The locals, who had initially thought Artyom was mad, now looked at him with admiration. They began recording short videos on their phones, capturing the time the man and lion spent together. These clips spread across social media, and soon the story of Artyom and Scar went viral. People from all over the world sent messages of support, shared their own stories of animal rescues, and sent money and food for Scar. But for Artyom, none of that mattered. He wasn't seeking fame. His goal was to bring Scar back to life, to give him a chance. And that chance was becoming reality with each passing day. Scar could now run. His roar echoed powerfully again, and his movements carried the grace of a true king of beasts. When Scar fully recovered, Artyom faced a difficult choice. He knew the lion was a wild animal, and his place was in nature, not beside a human. But the thought of letting Scar go tore at his heart. They had become friends, bound by an invisible thread of trust and understanding. Artyom reached out to local conservationists to find a safe place for Scar where he could live freely but under supervision. In the end, they decided to relocate Scar to a reserve where he could live in a natural environment but under the care of specialists. On the day Scar was taken away, Artyom stood by the crate in which the lion would be transported to his new home. Scar looked at him with his large, intelligent eyes. There was no fear or distrust in them, only calmness and something akin to a farewell. Artyom placed his hand on the crate's bars, and Scar, stepping closer, touched him with his paw as if saying, "Thank you." The videos of this story, filmed by locals and Artyom himself, were edited into a YouTube video. It had no grandiose words or dramatic music, just the truth. Footage of the emaciated lion, Scar's first steps, his recovery, and finally the moment of farewell. The video ended with Artyom's words, "Sometimes all it takes is to stop and extend a hand, even when the whole world says there's no hope." The video garnered millions of views. People cried, felt inspired, and shared it with friends. The story of Artyom and Scar became a reminder that kindness and faith can work miracles. And somewhere in the reserve, amidst vast open spaces, Scar now lives freely, but perhaps in his heart, he carries the memory of the man who gave him a second chance at life. Dear friend, thank you for watching this video. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give it a like. Your support helps us share such inspiring stories with the world.